Well, it's fairly common knowledge that the Jeep YJ bodies pretty much very similar to the CJ bodies. And one good piece about that is YJs came with half doors, just like modern TJs and JKs and even the new JLs have. Because the YJ bodies and the CJ bodies have the same door opening, not only do the full doors fit, but also the half doors fit. So if you want to put half doors to your old CJ7 in particular, you can use these YJ half doors. So what I did is I took a good set, not non-rotted set, stripped them down, pulled everything out of it, had them painted up, and now I'm going to go ahead and reassemble them. Now there were some issues with the door. I'll talk about what they were and show you what we did to fix them. But I also want to show you some of the replacement parts I'm going to use and why they're not as good as the parts that I took out of them. So let's take a peek. Now first up here, you'll notice these two areas. Now this is where the latches go, or the strap goes, I should say. You would use to hold this to the Jeep, right? So it doesn't fly open. Now you'll see there's some bending here, and this isn't too bad. This will hold. The other door, these were completely ripped out. So this might be an area you have to have welded up and repaired so that you can put your strap back on going forward. That was really the only issue, was on one of my doors I had that problem. Now, taking a look at these doors, I'm starting the process here. I'm replacing the latch here, the handle. I'm going with a stainless or a chrome looking one. This is the one that came up. I'm doing that because these are a little messed up. But right out of the box, I just want to show you something here. So you'll see, I mean, the new one versus the old one, right? One thing to point out is out of the box, these came backwards. And yes, I am using the right side. But look at how small and scrawny this little clip is. This is what's going to connect to the rod. I'll show you that in a little bit to open the door. And look at how big the factory one was and how much more durable it was. And not to mention that it's on the right side. So right out of the box, this needs to be flipped around, and it's very tiny. You're really not going to have a lot of luck with this. If you're not careful with it, you'll snap it. So the good news is why I always keep the old parts, because you should be able to sneak this one in if you want. I'm not going to bother replacing it, but I'll probably just put this in my parts bin. But just one quality item right there, just for you to take a look at. Another quality item is going to be on the lock cylinders. So I bought these replacement lock cylinders, and some CJ7 doors were like this, and some of the early YJ doors, including the half doors. There were different styles in the back for how the locks worked. Now factory CJ, this is what came off of it, and I already started taking it apart. Here's the piece that went on top. So it's very similar, right? I don't have the keys for these, plus there were some issues here, and so I figured I'd just order a new set, right? Well, the funny part about this is the keys that you get, these are some like blank keys. They're not the traditional rounded door keys that you would have had with the original cylinder, so that's kind of one strike against them in my opinion. But not only that, it doesn't come with the clip that you need to connect it to the rod, so I'm gonna have to transfer this from the old one. So why they don't send that in the box is beyond me, but, and this came with two, it came with both sides. Why it didn't come in the box is beyond me, but so I'm actually gonna have to push this one out. And it's pretty easy to do, it's just a piece of plastic. You gotta be careful. You know, you gotta push this in and then push it out, and this will come out and you press it right back in there. It's not really a big deal, but just kind of sad that it didn't come with it. I mean, you really need it. So the other thing I want to show you is the handle. So my interior panel was gray, and so it had gray handles, and these are pretty skunky. The new ones I bought in black, and these are actually pretty good. These feel pretty decent. So I would say out of the newer parts I bought, the handle is probably the nicer quality of the items that I purchased. And I'll walk you over here just to show you the door panels, the interior panels. I just spray painted these. I cleaned them and just spray painted them black using a black plastic paint to go over them. So coming back over here, you're gonna see this is the door mechanism. Again, I pulled that out to have it painted. So you'll see there's two rods that are connected on this by default. And then there's gonna be two rods that are connected on this long piece here. This is your interior handle, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and keep, even though, see how faded and kind of disgusting this one is. I'm gonna use this one though. The reason is I've bought these replacement ones before and they're not as good. So this is an original one. Believe it or not, they look very similar, but this is just a better quality piece. So I'm gonna go, even though it's kind of, I probably could paint it a little bit, but I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. Just because, you know, these rods come off of it and you can buy just this black piece. But like I was saying, it's the quality of the replacement parts is just not that great. So I'm gonna go ahead and use it. But anyway, you basically have 4 rods to connect. You have these 2, which will connect onto here, and then you have these 2 rods, which are going to connect you to your handle and to your lock cylinder, which is going to go in here. Okay. So again, I already put the new chrome one in, 2 bolts, stuck those in there. I'm going to have to flip this yellow thing around. I'll put the lock cylinder in. I'll get this installed, which is pretty simple. You just really kind of snake it in here, and there's 3 bolts that bolt it up to this. So I'm going to go ahead and get all this in place and then show you. Okay. So we've got the lock in here. All right, now what we did is, now the way these lock works, you see there's these little indentations, okay? So the lock only fits in one way, all right? And of course the lockers are not marked left or right. So if you're taking the old door apart, you should kind of make note of which way this is flowing. But the reality is it'll only work one way. So with these rods, here's the thing about the rods, they're rods, right? So they're only gonna fit one way. You're not gonna bend them, you can't get creative with these things. So like I said, there's 4 of them. The trickiest one, or at least the one that I at first was a little confused by, was the locking rod, because that one is sort of up top here on the mechanism. Okay, so that rod comes down here and it's gonna meet up, see if I can get the light in here. It's gonna meet up with the lock right here. It's gonna connect on in there, okay? This rod here, again, these 2 rods were already on the latch, right? And I flip this around. This rod is going to connect right there. It literally lands right where it's supposed to be. So it's really not hard to line these up. And then the 2 rods, you'll see the little insulation material. I put this over here. They just sneaks right in. You slide it in. They come all the way down to here. They're a little awkward. I leave this loose because there's 3 bolts here, and I just leave this loose so I can finagle around with this while you get them in. They're a little bit of a pain, but they go in pretty easily. One thing that I always do, and I'm going to do here, is I'm just going to put a little bit of white lithium grease on the edges of these, all these rods, just to help them slide in, make everything slide better. And so all the pivot points in here, I threw some grease on as well. And we'll just show you from the other side real quick. Here, you'll see that here's my lock. There's a little gasket around it. You can see that little black gasket. That did come with it. On these chrome ones here, this black gasket that's around it did not come with it. I'm using those black gaskets from the old, from these guys that I took off. So again, another quality issue with the new parts. They didn't send that little gasket. So what does that cost? Half a penny to make, but they didn't put it in there. So however, they did with the locks. So again, you don't really have a lot of options for these things. I think there's only one company that really makes these. So you're kind of at the luck of the draw. If you save as much as you can of the original stuff, that's really what I'm trying to tell you. And if you can't reuse it, or for some reason you want, say, the chrome look, which I do, this is a Laredo that it's going on. That's why I'm not using these, but these are still good, so I'm gonna keep them. You never know when you might need a part off of them or whatever the case might be. So I'm gonna go ahead and hook these rods up, and then when I'm done, I'll show you a working model. Okay, so this is all back together now. You can see I got all the rods on. These 2 are the hardest ones to put on, but when I say hard, it's really not that hard. You just gotta finesse it. I find it easy if you loosen this up. Just have it loosely placed in there. These 2 go on very easily. Again, a little lithium grease in there. Same thing for the lock. Okay, and with the lock, you have this clip, right? This is used pressure. It slides underneath there. Again, put a little grease on it, help it slide, goes right in, okay? One other thing I wanted to talk to you about is just hardware. So as you'll see here, the hardware, it's this sort of like rounded, square-edged Torx bolts, 2 of them that go there, okay? Now for your loop, you have these here. They have a little bit of a bevel on them. Okay, this is the factory hardware, right? And then you have these. These are the bolts that hold the latch in place. Okay, they got a little bit of a Loctite on them. All right, and these, you got 3 of these, and they go 1, 2, 3. Same on the opposite side to hold the latch in. So that's what the factory hardware looks like. So what I'm gonna do is just button this up real quick, and I'll show you one that I started putting on the Jeep already so you can get a sense of what it looks like. Okay, now here we are on the CJ. You'll see a couple things. One, I'm not using factory hinges. I'm using the chrome hinges. And it matters a little bit because I find these to be a little bit more forgiving actually than the factory ones were. but I am using factory hinges on the door. Now, why do I have white bolts? I have white bolts because I'm not using, so these hinges I had painted. By the way, from factory, these wouldn't be painted underneath. So when you're having these redone, right, a good idea is to paint underneath the hinge and underneath the door. This way you don't get any rust underneath. So both sides of the hinge are painted, both sides of the door are painted. And I'm doing the assembly now that everything's painted. You got to be careful, right, doing that, because you can scratch things up. Hence why you see I'm using these bolts. We could have a full-length featured documentary film on how to put doors on a CJ. Every one I've ever touched, it's always a different adjustment. I don't care what you got, how good it is, how straight it is. They're always a different adjustment. And you're going to be in and out with these bolts. I don't even know how many times. So what I like to do is get it all set up, use a set of old bolts to get it where you want it to be. And then one at a time, I'll swap these out and put the real bolts, the painted bolts, the black bolts that I had painted up, I'll put those in last. The idea is you don't want to keep going in and out, in and out, in and out with the bolts you had painted, because then you're going to destroy the paint on those bolts, okay? And you could, I guess, do all the adjustments, then have the door painted, but again, you're going to have, paint along the sides here, clear coat along the sides. It could crack. What if you have to take these out in the future? So I like to have everything painted and then assemble it once it's painted. Just my preference, okay? One other thing that you're going to notice here is down here, you're going to see a little washer. So again, you have adjustments here, you have adjustments here, you have adjustments here, don't really have much adjustment here. You then have adjustments. Let's open this up. Oh, we've got it locked, just to show you the lock does work. And then you have adjustments here, not many. And I always find that I actually have to take this whole thing off in order to adjust this properly the way that I want it. Finally got it where I need it to be. So that it'll close. Watch this. See, that latch closed nicely. Open it, close it, open it, close it, okay? The key does work. If I turn it, it's really hard to turn because it's junk, not like the factory stuff, but it is locked, so can't do it. Unlocked. Here we go. I can't even tell you how many times I did all this. Going back to this washer, I use this washer. See, sometimes you want to look at the gap alignment here, right? And it's roughly the same gap at the top here as it is kind of down the bottom here. Sometimes, even though you have all these adjustments, you still need to shim it a little bit. So every now and then I'll throw a washer, usually on the bottom hinge. And remember, there's a lot of play with these hinges. If you loosen all these bolts up, this door will go all different kinds of ways. So you only have so much play. I find that I often need to increase it down here, and I often need to adjust the striker. I often need to do both of those things. Now, you'll also notice I don't have the rubber seal on it. I was trying to reuse the original one, but as you can see, there's a lot of, when I pulled it out, this is just an old seal, right? You'll see that it ripped where a lot of those little pins are. So it really just wasn't hanging in there good. These aren't cheap either. To be honest with you, I'm not really going to be driving this Jeep in bad weather, so I'm evaluating or not whether I'm actually going to even put a seal on it, because for my purposes, unless I'm going to drive this around just a little bit, see if it rattles at all or moves. Doesn't look like it's hitting anywhere, which is good, so I don't have to worry about paint wearing off. If I sense that it might hit or might scrape, then I'll probably invest in a new one of these. But being how this is not a daily driver, it's just something I drive in nice days, I'm not really going to worry too much about the seal. You'll also notice that I haven't put the interior panel in yet. That's going to be next, but I just wanted to show you again, this is the driver's side door. I did this one earlier. Again, all the mechanisms are in place, as I said to you, and that panel is just gonna slide right on top of this, so it's pretty easy to put in. And then there's three guys that go on top that just sort of hold it in place, and if you have the uppers, that's what the uppers slide into, but they just push in, so it is very, very simple. But there we have it. So it only took me about an hour to adjust this door, but I've done a few different CJ doors before, and it's relatively, if you look at my gaps, they're pretty good. This was a pretty straight body, so the gaps are actually pretty good on this. They're not great, but they're pretty good for a CJ. I have some where they're really, really bad, and that's after hours and hours and hours of adjustment. So anyway, here you have it. If you have any questions, just comment below. If you want to see any further details or want any further details on what I used or what I did, or just have any questions, just leave me a comment. Thanks for watching.